If you're like me, you've spent some time wondering, what is the most successful solo single by a member of the Rolling Stones? A lot of people say that Keith Richards' Talk Is Cheap is the best album, but it had no hits. Ron Wood sung that wonderful Faces song, Ooh La La, but his solo albums haven't been that successful. Charlie Watts did the Charlie Parker stuff. Brian Jones did the Morocco recordings. It's not those. It has to be Mick Jagger, right? His first single in 1984, Just Another Night, was a pretty big hit. But the truth is, the answer of the most successful Rolling Stones solo single will shock you. It's shocking because it's synth-heavy, it's new wave, has French lyrics, and sounds like no Rolling Stones song you've ever heard before. I'll explain now. Robert's Record Corner. I'm Robert. Now, whatever you think about Bill Wyman, the bassist of the Rolling Stones from 1962 to 1989, one thing you cannot say is that he did not contribute to the band. In fact, whenever I'm listening to some old Stones song and the bass suddenly jumps out and I listen to it, it is always Bill Wyman. And I say this because only about 65% of the Stones songs from the 70s and 80s is Bill on bass. Ron and Keith often did the bass parts because Bill was around. Bill Wyman is not the most charismatic Rolling Stone. He's been the oldest one from the beginning. He plants himself on stage almost as if he's some hanger-on that kind of snuck on. But this Bill Wyman, as you may have guessed, is actually the champion of the Rolling Stones Solo Olympics because he made the most successful solo single. Not Mick, not Keith. It's Bill Wyman. Bill freaking Wyman. Actually, his middle name is George. Where to begin with the 1980-1982 corridor for Bill Wyman? First of all, in the 1970s, he released 2 solo albums which didn't amount to much, and he himself didn't have a very high opinion of.
They weren't that good, were they?
As the 1980s came, the last thing that Bill Wyman wanted to do was record another solo album. So he started making soundtracks. In fact, he made one for the movie Green Ice, which is hilariously bad, and perhaps most memorable for showcasing how truly bad an actor Ryan O'Neal is. Now in it, you can hear an instrumental, bouncy, with a little Caribbean sound to it, which are the roots of what would become the most successful Rolling Stones solo single of all time.
You're so la-di-da.
Now, in 1979, a year before Bill Wyman started to think about this song, Eddie Grant recorded a song called Say I Love You, which was a hit single. Bill was a friend of Eddie's, and he asked Eddie, hey, can I basically steal that song and do something with it? And Eddie said, yeah, go for it, which is amusing on a lot of levels, including that he needs to steal a song based on 2 chords, and that Eddie Grant and Bill Wyman hung out together. Now, you can hear that instrumental in the soundtrack. But afterwards, Bill decided to write lyrics for it. Lyrics that he considers a bit of a send-up. Principally, he wanted the song to be sung by Ian Dury and the Blockheads. Now, this punk band had a string of unexpected hits in England in 1978 and 1979, and Ian probably thought the last thing he needed was a song from Bill Wyman, the quiet, weird Stone. So he said no. Incidentally, Ian Dury never had a hit single again.
What a waste.
Bill did. Bill went in and recorded it as a single with vocals, and it became Je Suis Un Rock Star. At the time, the Rolling Stones were putting together Tattoo and going on a world tour in 1981, and it would eventually appear on the solo album Bill Wyman never wanted to make, 1982's Bill Wyman. There's Bill there.
A new smile will keep things ticking for a while.
Why I think that Bill Wyman's 1982 album is a lost cult classic, waiting for people to rediscover or discover for the first time, is because it does something that the Rolling Stones never did. It goes all in on new wave. Now, if you look at the years 1977, 78, 79, you see a lot of classic rock people paying attention to new wave. In 1978, Neil Young's recording with Devo. In 1979, the Kinks go punk and new wave with low budget. In 1980, Paul McCartney II has all kinds of new wave elements, particularly on the song Temporary Secretary. Some of John Lennon's last recordings is producing what I think is a new wave classic and the best song Yoko Ono ever did.
I gave you my knife.
Pete Townshend of The Who went new wave. You saw it with his haircut. You saw it with his solo song, Face Dances Part 2. and covering the beats Save It for Later in a very memorable way.
Sooner or later, your legs give way, you hit the ground. Save it for later.
Bill Wyman was there in '82. The absolute highlight of the album, of course, is Suis Un Rock Star, which went to number 14 in the UK, which means that it was more successful than certain Rolling Stones singles like Street Fighting Man, Happy, Heartbreaker, She's So Cold, Waiting on a Friend. All of them did worse on the charts in the UK than Suis Un Rock Star. The song is really funny. He has a deadpan delivery with a Cockney accent of this older guy trying to woo a young Brazilian woman.
They'll think I'm your dad, and you're my daughter.
And he butchers French all the way through it.
Suis un rock star, je have un residence, je have a tailor.
It's really, really funny. It's really, really catchy. And yes, I could imagine Ian Drury doing it. But thank you for turning him down, because now we have Bill Wyman's version. Now, let's be honest, the album isn't exactly excellent. It's certainly better than Mick Jagger's She's the Boss from a couple years later. Side 2 is a little better than side 1. It starts with Come Back Suzanne, another single which is kind of nervy and funny, directed towards Bill's wife. Girls has some funny guitars. Rio's this kind of slight postcard that's almost a prequel to Suis Un Rock Star. On side 1, you see Brian Setzer of the Stray Cats playing guitar on the opening track before the Stray Cats ever made it big. And you have the third single on the album, New Fashion, with lots of little synth pads. And I think that any look at the Rolling Stones solo discography has to consider Bill Wyman from 1982. It's the most successful, and in many ways, it's the most daring. Have you heard this album? You should hear it, even if you don't have the picture disc. Bill freaking Wyman. Actually, his middle name is George. Incidentally, I found the 12 inches Just Un Rock Star a few years ago. Signed by Bill Wyman.